Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
When you figure out something needs to be done, and you definitely had a good system with this idea of, okay, I'm working here, I'm doing these things. These are all the things that need to be done tomorrow. I'm writing them down right away. That was really effective because it takes it out of your brain and it puts it in a trusted place that you can access. Why it worked for you was that it was a singular focus, singular area kind of thing. Now, when we have multiple things, they are too inclined to kind of intertwine and distract. So when you take stuff out of your brain now, it's important. You need to declutter your brain, but it needs to go in a place that is not the to-do list yet. It is a mind sweep or a brain sweep, but it's going to be your to-choose list.
You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Today's episode is about time management, except not really. Because the thing is, we don't manage time, do we? We manage ourselves. So when you're thinking of time management, I want you to think instead of energy management, priority management, and self-management. A quick note, today's strategy call episode is sponsored by the Positively Productive Strategy Session. This heart-opening, mind-expanding, goal-setting session, much like what you'll hear today, gives you the clarity you need to determine your best steps forward. If you're feeling frustrated, anxious, stuck, overwhelmed, stressed, this is the place to start. Go to positivelyproductive.com/strategy and be sure to use promo code podcast for a very special listener discount. Today, I'm coaching Amanda Acker on the Positively Living podcast. Amanda is an inspiring guest, and I'm so excited I had the opportunity to help her process all the things she's juggling, including her family with husband and kids, her day job, podcast, and growing business. She has lots of passions and lots of dreams, and today we streamlined how she approaches each of these things so she can keep them in her life without losing herself. Coming from a past of drug abuse, homelessness, and being a convicted felon, Amanda has broken through and was able to let the good things into her life. She's now on a mission to inspire people who have had a difficult past and haven't yet realized they're stronger than they think and they can have the life they deserve. Amanda wants to help you rise above the labels of society and burst through the ceilings you've put on top of yourself. Her podcast is Let the Good Things In Show. When Amanda applied to be a coaching guest, she asked for help with time management and described her challenges and what she tried, such as time blocking, timers, and to-do lists. But none of them really stuck. Although we touched upon those, what we ended up focusing on most in our conversation today may surprise you. At the end, Amanda was breathing easier and excited to implement new approaches, including a special way to create and combine to-do lists that she hadn't tried before. We even found a special time slot for her me time that moms so need, and you will chuckle at what she wants to do during that time. As a companion to this episode, I suggest listening to episodes 3 on time management and 69 on tackling your to-do list. Welcome, Amanda Acker, to the Positively Living podcast. I'm so delighted that you were willing to come on and do a coaching session with me and see if we can't get you breathing easier and inspired with what the best next steps are for you to take.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to dive in.
Amanda, I'd love if you'd start with sharing a bit about what you're doing and what's challenging you right now.
Yeah, so I do a lot. I have a day job full time. I just launched a podcast. I am launching a coaching business next month. I have 2 children and I have a husband, and I also like to watch TV. And what's challenging right now more than anything is my staying focused. I feel like I'm doing 10 things at once and I can't just stay on one path for longer than like 15 minutes, if that, if I'm lucky, that's stretching it, before I'm like, "Oh, I need to be doing this and oh, I need to be doing that." And then I get nothing done. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay, so the short bursts that you're doing are interrupted actually by you getting distracted or remembering there's something else that you need to be doing?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. First of all, you need to know that you are in good company. There's so many of us that are challenged with this. Could you tell me a bit about not only what you're juggling, but how you're juggling it, how you're keeping track of it, what you're doing in terms of calendars and lists and kind of what your layout looks like?
Sure. So, unfortunately, I don't have this clean cut answer to that. I have my calendar, which holds like my any type of podcast recording I'm doing, any calls I'm on, that's all in my calendar. But then I try to make these to-do lists and I'll start off like, okay, I'm going to have it. I work really well with to-do lists. So I make them and then I'm like, well, wait, that's just for one piece of my life. And then I get overwhelmed and I just don't do it. So right now I'm very disorganized behind the scenes. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, and that's understandable when you are juggling multiple things. Now, in terms of where you stand with all the different things that you're juggling, these all appear to be what we'll say important to you, right? And these are
Yes.
all things that are part of what you want as integral pieces of your life.
Yes, for
Okay.
sure.
So then what we need to look at is the sliding scale of what pieces need to be done when. It's almost like finessing in terms of an ebb and flow. Have you noticed that there's a change up in terms of like summer going back to school? Like what's the situation with your kids, for example?
Yeah. So my kids, I have split custody, so I don't have them every day.
Okay.
But they did start back to school. So now my son is not here during the week. He's only with me on the weekends. And my daughter is here half the week, but I have to she's in a district that's outside of where I live. So I have to like get her to school and I have to pick her up. So yes, it alleviates a little bit of my time because she's not constantly distracting me. But at the same time, it brings its own stresses, right? So now I'm like getting, worried about her in school and what's going on with my son. Like today at his school, he had a bomb threat, like all these like random activities that happened in the school year. Like honestly, I'm the parent who I love summer. I'd rather them just be here and not have to stress about it. So that's that situation.
Okay, so pickups and drop offs, and of course, what's going on with school. And, I feel you on a personal level with that because I have two kiddos in middle school, and man, it is complicated with
Yeah.
everything that's going on. So, that being said, you do want to honor and have some self compassion for the challenges that arise with that. So, in that case, I mean, those are things that those are must deal with, so to speak. I don't know. That's an awkward phrase, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's the things we must deal with. And so those, in a sense, are their own kind of priority. And so, in terms of the timing each day when you have to leave and drop off, what are we looking like in terms of where you are and what you're doing in terms of your schedule?
So on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, I guess first I should say my day job, I work 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. from home most days. So that makes it easier. So on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I have to leave my house to take her to school around 8. And then I don't get back until about 9. So I'm losing that whole chunk of time. Then when I do get back, I'm rushing to get things caught up with my day job. But then she's out of school. I pick her up Monday and Tuesday, and that's after my day job is over, but it infringes on my ability to do like networking calls or I don't do podcast recordings when she's home. But if I'm on someone else's, like if it was 3 o'clock, I can't do it, So I'm like shoving everything into like 3 days out of the week, if maybe two some weeks. So it's a lot.
Okay. So 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. is technically the hours, is that Monday through Friday of your day job that you're working at home?
Yes.
Then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, did you say? Would that be the drop off and pickup for her? Or is it just Monday and Tuesday?
I drop her off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but I drop off and pick up Monday and Tuesday. I know that's like kind of confusing, but
That's fine. But what we're doing is, and I'm actually sketching this out. So this is a technique you can do anytime in terms of laying out these numbers and these times to kind of figure out. It's like reverse engineering. You have to work your way backward, right? And you know this already from what you have to do, where you're leaving, you need to drop her off at 8, or you're leaving at 8, you said, but you get
yeah.
back by 9. Is that right?
Yeah.
And that's good to know because you're like, okay, 8 to 9, there's a gap, but then there's also makeup in terms of your day job. And now, is that a lot of mental energy, or is it more like detail work, or is it just simply making it up and you can do it quickly? Like, where are you with that?
It varies. So I'm an office manager, so it's a lot of admin work, but I also deal a lot with medical billing. So dealing with problem claims and dealing with insurances and all that fun stuff. So, it's some of the stuff isn't mentally taxing, but some of it is. So it just depends on the day, honestly. That's kind of hard to gauge.
Okay. And is there any control that you have in terms of what you're working on, with the office work that you're doing? I understand that emergencies can come in and certain things can come in, but are you at the mercy of certain things that are submitted each day, or do you have any control over what kinds of work you're doing at certain times?
Besides for, unexpected things, I have full control over what I do every day. So I'm the only, well, we have a billing person, but I'm the only admin. So I kind of run the show in that department. So I do have a lot of control over what I'm doing each day, for like regular daily activities.
Okay. And would you say that after you do drop off and you come back, I understand that you are scrambling a little bit, but during that next part, would you say it's a little easier for you to focus on your work for your day job?
Yes. After I drop my daughter off, yes, it is a lot easier to focus for sure.
So one of the first things, and it may seem like an obvious action item, but definitely if you can look at what you're doing for your office management job and take a look at the different kinds of groups of tasks that you have and see if you can shuffle around and intentionally and promote this even with people that you work with, that maybe during the hours of 6 to 10 this is the kind of work you'll be doing, and then they know that after 10, let's say, or even 9:30 or whatever kind of works for you, that you'll then tackle the more difficult tasks that are going to take more focus or quiet or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about, okay, how are you handling things at home and what you're doing in your own business, but it is also about kind of, to the extent that you can, of course, helping people that you work with understand the patterns that you have as well. So can you think of some things that you might do in the office that are a little easier than others, some tasks that might be less taxing?
Yes, I am really quick with like verifying insurances. I'm really quick with entering appointments. Like anything that's data entry, it's mindless. So
Okay.
it's very simple.
Right. So if going intentionally with that kind of structure that and do this consistently across the board so you have a habit. So even Thursdays and Fridays where you're not dealing with drop off and pickup, you know that you are dealing from, like, let's say 6 to 9:30, 6 to 10, whatever will work for you, that you're doing some of those quick win, less taxing things that you're better at.
Yeah, I like that idea. I've never thought of doing it that way. So I'm
Right.
like writing this down.
Good, good. And don't worry, I will be sending you a list of everything we go through as well as a follow up so that this way you can be in the moment right now and just be brainstorming with me to figure out kind of ways to tweak. So, with that, if you do that structure, that will also ease the stress a bit of coming back, because the quote scramble that you will be less so, because even when you're coming back, you will be quote catching up on the stuff that you do quickly, and you'll whip through it, so that even for the days that you're catching up and the other days that you aren't, you'll whip through it quickly. And then you'll have that point. You can almost consider it where you start like your next shift, if you will, like the next stage of your office management work, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so again, give yourself whatever cutoff, the 9:30 or 10 that works. And then you're like, now that's when I start what's an example of something that you really need to focus on that's more challenging.
Billing for
There you
sure.
go. Okay. I'm just writing down 10 a.m. billing or whatever. And this way, again, There may be exceptions to the rule. Once in a while, something will come through and it'll be like, this is on fire and spinning madly. Amanda, please take care of it. You have to drop things and do it. But not everything is as urgent as people necessarily expect.
Yeah.
Okay. So see, there was a surprise for us that we weren't even thinking, okay, what can you do with the day job? But that will actually make it more efficient for you. You can move quicker and more importantly, stress reduction in terms of I've dropped my daughter off and now I'm juggling and I have to get back to that focus. So 2 p.m. is the cutoff. And on Mondays and Tuesdays, you are then going to pick up your daughter.
Right. I like to leave by 2:45 to go get her.
All right. So 2:45. And then after that, you said there are certain things like once she's home, you don't necessarily want to do. So what are the tasks that you would want to do while she's at school versus when she's home?
Any kind of Zoom call, any connection calls. I purposely don't do my podcast recordings when she's home, but for guesting, I do, but I have like certain times, but we can talk about that. But your question, I'm sorry, I went off a
Nope.
little bit, but I would rather do like connection calls and stuff when she's not here because my daughter she's 8, but she's very attached to me. She'll be like right here, I'm distracted, so I can't focus on the person I'm talking to. And it just makes me feel like I'm like not present, I
Not fully
guess.
present. And you know
Yeah.
what? You just hit upon such an important thing when it comes to productivity is that a big part of what we're trying to do is prepare ourselves for what we need to do. We see that with chefs all the time, right? In restaurants, they have what's called mise en place. They have everything in place, ready to go before they do the project. So that's our environment and organizing and things like that. And then the other part is getting ourselves situated so that we're mentally prepared, which is why we went back to that idea of, well, what could you do for your day job that's a little easier in that moment where you're more distracted because you have to do the juggle? And then what can you do when you're fully focused? Same idea here. What are some of the things that you know that you can do and you have managed to do when your daughter's home?
I have done podcast recordings as a guest. I do that after during the summer, it was easier because I didn't have to go to bed as early.
Mhm.
But now that she's back in school, so for like different time zones, I can do things at 8 o'clock when she's in bed, but not every single night. I tend to do that. I also do a lot of my like back end stuff. So like just, trying when she's playing or whatever, like trying to get things organized.
Mhm.
And then also, spending time with my husband is a huge priority.
Yeah, absolutely. So during the time, like I would say after you pick her up, there's going to be that transition period. You pick her up, you want to have some interaction, you want to get her settled in what she's doing, and then you can work your way in. So if you're leaving at 2:45, when would you say you get home?
We get back. It depends on if we stop at Dunkin' Donuts, but typically,
You are my kind of people.
typically it's around like 3:45, maybe 3:30 sometimes. It just depends on traffic.
Okay. So if you say, again, with anything that we're doing when we're budgeting money, budgeting time, let's be really conservative. And let's say that once you get back and get settled in, you could probably start back up at 4 p.m., right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So saying at 4 p.m., but here's the distinction during that time. So from 4 to 8, let's say, you're going to be doing some work, but you will also need to stop for dinner, get her to bed, that sort of thing. So even if you say, all right, I'm going to do, I don't know, 4 to 5:30, that's 90 minutes. And that could be a good sprint time to do some deep diving. But what you want to focus on then is the stuff, what I call working on your business, not in your business. So if we make that distinction, intentionally Mondays and Tuesdays, specifically in the afternoon, you are going to be working on your business. So that is the back end stuff. That is maybe looking at your to-do list and tweaking that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. One thing I did want to note is that if you are done with work by 2 o'clock and you leave at 2:45, you want to give yourself a few minutes of, breather to have some transition time. However, you could technically do like 1 20-minute connection call in that time.
Yeah.
And I mean, even those 2 days, if you did that, that's 2 connection calls a week. And so what you want to kind of look at too is not only how much you're budgeting, but how many you're hitting per week and what the purpose is of them and how they are converting and working for you. Because if you have too many and you're sitting there feeling like, I don't have time to even have connection calls, we have to ask the question, well, how many do you really need and what are they doing for you? Because otherwise, that would be busy work anyhow, right?
Yeah. I fell into that trap earlier this year. I was having like 20 coffee chats a week and I was like, this is sucking all of my time.
There you go. So being intentional about who it is absolutely okay. Say it with me. It's absolutely okay to have a couple of slots per week and to be very intentional about who gets to have those. And if people have to wait, it's okay. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
There we go. So, yeah, I mean, I would say just limit the chats and then it's not going to be as difficult to organize them. This is my concept of decluttering all the time. The more that we can simplify and limit, easier it's going to be to fit it into whatever space that we're dealing with. Be very intentional about those chats. You could easily squeak in like 2 on Monday and Tuesday, or you may even find that on Monday and Tuesday, you want to leave that space open intentionally and go, you just say, I have chats Wednesday through Friday.
Yeah, I like that because I do need me time. That's what's missing from my life.
Okay.
It's just, I never stop. So,
Yes. Okay. Then actually, I think we just made the choice then. So again, I know we want to squeak things in. I know that sometimes there's a push, like when we're launching something or we're moving forward, but at the same time, you want to be able to step back and have those breaks. And sometimes we think that me time and we think that self care has to be this big thing and take forever. It doesn't. I would say that 2 p.m. to 2:45 when you leave, that's you. That's all you. That's all Amanda. Whatever you want to do with that. But think in terms of the stuff that's going to let you breathe easier. That's going to just like light you up. Let's make you happy, just make you feel abundant or relaxed or just like woohoo, you know, whatever it happens. I bet you can think of something right off the top of your head, right?
yeah, and it's going to make you laugh. It's cleaning my house. Like, I love cleaning my house.
That is fantastic. I love that. The other thing I love about that is that any kind of pickup, tidying, cleaning up of any kind is a wonderful thing to do during time transitions. Because you want to think about your life, especially when you have multiple things going on in your life, multiple people, multiple passions. It's like shift work, right? You go from one shift to the next and you're shifting, you're transitioning, you need buffer time. I think that is a great thing to do during that time to whatever extent you want. And it's also great if you go, yeah, no, I don't want to do that either.
Yeah.
So then Wednesday through Friday, you're still having the 6 to 2. You know what you're dealing with. You are allotting, like, let's say the 6 to 10 to be the quote easier work for office management. And then the, 10 to 2 or whatever you're working with would be the more difficult. What's really interesting about that, I'm going to assume that you switch back and forth between work and trying to do stuff for your business and home and stuff too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Let's
do.
keep it real here, people, right? But here's the thing, it's not about, you do need to be available certain hours for certain kinds of jobs. But the real key is, are you getting the work done that needs to get done, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to go ahead and assume you are doing that with your day job. And given that, there are other opportunities. But what I would say, and I think this is both beneficial for your day job and for you, is that the earlier hours where you're doing the easy things for the day job would also be a great time to do maybe some of the more challenging work or maybe some of the heavier lifting for your business, so to speak.
Okay.
Again, because if you have like the 8 to 9 where you were picking up your daughter and you don't have that Wednesday through Friday, maybe that could be an opportunity where you take an intentional break and you do your podcast recording and then jump back in just like you do to play the catch up and then move on. How would that sound?
Yeah, I like that. I use the early morning hours too because I'm up at like 4:30 in the morning.
Okay.
So I do my social media posting then. That's when I do a lot of my, networking I'm a huge Facebook person. So I'm like all over Facebook at the wee hours of the morning. And sometimes I'll do a podcast recording on a Thursday or a Friday morning at 7 a.m. But I found that in doing that, I feel too rushed. Like, I don't feel like I'm focused on my guests. I kind of took those out except for people who are in crazy time zones because, oh my gosh, it's so hard to get some, especially if you're in Australia, like, or New Zealand. It's crazy.
It is. And again, if you focus on the numbers that you're doing and alternating, keep in mind too that we are in seasons of our life that it doesn't always stay that way. So maybe for now too, there might be a way that you pattern your podcast where you aren't as available to those in Australia. I happen to be, it's kind of a funny thing. I've been working a lot with Australian people, but it's also because I'm in a position now where my kids are older and I can do more at night and I didn't used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So keep that in mind that just like when you niche down, when you're working with specific people, you're not always going to be available for everyone. You don't want to be everything to everyone. So it's okay to intentionally say, these are my hours of availability, and that will limit who can join you for now. But at the same time, when you know that very clearly, you can also specifically ask for that. Let's say you're in a Facebook group and you're saying, this is the kind of guest I'm looking for. These are the hours that I record. Who's available? Trust me, there's so many people out there that are willing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So this is one of those let them come to you opportunities.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've talked about like the schedule and kind of where you can place some things, let's talk a little bit about your to-do list. I think that would be a good place for us to wrap up today. And tell me, what are you doing? Are you just writing down things as it comes to you, or how are you tracking it? You talked about using some techniques, some timers, writing to-do lists, but what does that look like for you?
Okay, so to go backwards a little bit, when I had another job before I started my entrepreneurship journey, that job was very intense. So, like, what I would do at the end of each day, I would write down what I need to do the next day. And then I would just keep, I literally religiously did it and I excelled because of that. But for some reason, I can't get myself to do it anymore. It's like, I tried a couple months ago and I was like, I don't need that. But I do. Like, I know I do. So I don't know how to like get myself to do it. It's the craziest thing.
One of the things you said to me was the idea of having, this to-do list. And I don't know if you actually said the words or I just heard them with my productivity coach's heart, but the idea that it's just tacking on and on and on and on, but you have so many hats that you wear. You have so many different pieces. Is that part of the equation that makes a quote to-do list challenging?
Maybe, yes. Because when I think about it, I'll be like, okay, like what do I have to do here? Then my brain starts like drifting to like, well, wait, you have to do this for this, and you have to call this doctor for your son. You have to do, and I'm like, wait, I'm just overwhelmed. I think that's part of the problem.
Okay. And that's completely understandable. What if we approach this as an idea of having multiple lists? But I want to be very clear about something. When you figure out something needs to be done, and you definitely had a good system with this idea of, okay, I'm working here, I'm doing these things. These are all the things that need to be done tomorrow. I'm writing them down right away. That was really effective because it takes it out of your brain and it puts it in a trusted place that you can access. Why it worked for you was that it was a singular focus, singular area kind of thing. Now, when we have multiple things, they are too inclined to kind of intertwine and distract. So when you take stuff out of your brain now, it's important. You need to declutter your brain, but it needs to go in a place that is not the to-do list yet. It is a mind sweep or a brain sweep, but it's going to be your to choose list. And I would say that you could do that in multiple ways. You could do it just in general. I have a worksheet in my free resources available online that is called the focus file, and it's like 5 minutes. Just take whatever is on your mind. I would highly recommend you do that. Put it down there, but that's not your to-do list. Same thing with your job, with, the podcast, with whatever it is that you're working on. Take the stuff out of your brain and put it down, but don't consider that the to-do list. And I would say you could use each of those as like a pool of items to choose from. And then every morning, since you're an early morning riser, you could look at each of those and capture like 3 is a magic number. I'm always saying 3. So I'll just say 3 to start, right? 3 things from each that are like, oh, that has to be done right away, or I'd like to do that today. Some of the things you want to answer are, is there a deadline attached to that that's a must do? Is there something there that I could do that's really going to move the needle forward, right? That's a big domino that's going to knock over other stuff. But the real key is not to have a to-do list that is so massive. I just did a podcast episode about this, tackling your to-do list in 4 simple steps. And the first step is deleting what doesn't belong. That's something you want to keep in mind, to not add something that really doesn't belong yet. But the other ones are delegating, figuring out how something can get done, automating it, then delaying it. And that might be a big one for you. As I said, you might delay having people, across the globe on your podcast, or you might delay certain groups that you can have on your podcast until such a time as your schedule may change, right?
Yeah, I like that.
And then once you've gone through deleting what doesn't belong, that's decluttering basically, delegating, meaning it's not all up to you. So others can do certain things and help out. And then you have your delay, which is, it's a not yet, but don't worry, we'll get to it. Then you can start to take these tactics, the timers, the time blocking, and place those things in. One last thing that I want to go over with you, I just want to make a note of, is that when you did the quizzes ahead of time, you did some pre-work for me and mentioned that you were an obliger in Gretchen Rubin's 4 Tendencies. Had you ever taken that assessment?
No, not that one.
Okay. So what that says, it speaks to how we show up in terms of expectations, inner or outer. And the obligers are actually, I think, over 70% of the population. And what it means is that if you want to do things that you need to do, outer accountability, having a session like we're having today, figuring out ways that someone else may benefit. This is likely why you are working on coaching and you have a podcast and you're sharing with everyone and trying to help so much. And by the way, the podcast Let the Good Things In show, I love that. And I love that perspective. So that really speaks to how an obliger will work best. If you want to read a book, having someone else or a book club to read it with. Obligers work really well when they're in team sports, when there's a reason to show up for something. So that's something to keep in mind as you move forward and you're trying to do the things that you want to do, especially the me time. But what I think is interesting is that you just gave me an example of something that works beautifully in all that, is to clean the house for everyone. It makes you happy and it's a great way to transition. So just keep that part in mind as you start to make your choices. But I think for today, adjusting that schedule at work and doing that consistent flex of what you're doing, easier tasks and then more focused tasks, using the time when your daughter's home to do more of working on your business, using the daytime to work in your business, limiting your chats and limiting the times when you record your podcast, and focusing very intentionally on transitioning your time, which not only helps you for the next thing you'll do, but gives you some of that me time. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Like when you list it all out, I was like, oh, like that sounds so nice and structured, because even though like I like to say like I don't conform, like which I don't conform in the general sense, but
Mhm.
I need structure. And when you said about the obliger, I was like, oh, that's so me. Yes, because if there's a reason for me to show up, I will. If people are counting on me, I'm there. But if it's just up to me, I might not. So
Right. So I think that what you're doing is helping you with that. So now it's a matter of putting that structure in place. Oh, and the last thing, and again, I will put this on the list that I send you, is the idea of tweaking the way you create a to-do list a little.
yeah.
That it's a difference between your capture lists and then your action items for the day, if you will. And then you will go in knowing, being proactive, that, okay, from 6 to 10, I'm working on this and I'm taking my daughter to school and then I'm coming back. And then this is what I'm doing in my business, or in the evening, this is what I'm doing on. And you can start to create those shifts and transitions and segments that flow from each other, because you still need to alternate when you're juggling this much. but it starts to be more harmonious, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Love that. Thank you.
How do you feel?
I feel great. I'm excited to write everything down and start creating more productive to-do lists that don't make me want to rip my hair out. So this has been great.
I love it. I'm excited for you. So tell us where we can find you online.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. You can send me a friend request, Amanda Marie Acker. I also have a Facebook group. It's the same as my podcast. It's called the Let Good Things In Show, and I would love to meet anyone. So I'm here.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to have those links in the show notes. And I want to thank you, Amanda, for sharing so fully today. And we look forward to an update.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.